With the first pick,
Thunderstruck! Thunderstruck! Yeah, Thunderstruck!
Welcome back to the Fantasy Rant, presented by Stadium Rant. So I am your fill-in host this week, Lee Cook, joined by Mason Beck. We are down one. Get better soon, Dan. We're pulling for you. So we're coming in today. We're going to have kind of a light episode. Follow Stadium Rant, Twitter, Facebook, X, YouTube. Share, follow, like, please. But we're coming at you guys. What's that?
Great advertising there. Good job.
Hey, share, follow. Please come back next week. We like our shows to be interactive. So if you're watching, please throw us some questions, trade questions, start sit. We will try to get to everybody who comments. But we're going to have a little bit more of a laid-back episode this week. So we're going to touch on a few different things, try to get you guys out of here on time, get everybody in bed and well-rested for a big Thursday night game tomorrow. You kind of got to start with the big news of the day. DeAndre Hopkins, 34-year-old DeAndre Hopkins, has a new lease on life. He has been rescued off of Will Levis Island, and he's been delivered to Patrick Mahomes and the two-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. So what do you think, Mason? What kind of impact does this have on D-Hop for the rest of the season? And what do you make of the impact for those left behind on Will Levis Island?
I mean, my first kind of reaction is obviously it does increase D-Hop's value, but I still don't think a ton. He's dealing with a leg injury. I'm not too sure on the specific of it. But I think that's something that could still linger. Kansas City, just the way their offense is kind of built, I don't think they're going to require it too much. I mean, I think definitely increases his ceiling and floor, but I think he's still going to be that guy that's going to produce around like 9 points a week in PPR leagues. Really only get like 3 or 4 catches a game, a couple big ones a game. That's kind of really where he's going to be at. As far as Tennessee, it does open up a lot for everyone else. Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd obviously get a little more interesting, but Will Levis or Mason Rudolph, whoever's going to be the quarterback there, is not trustworthy. I don't think it really has as big of a fantasy impact as people really think. I think people are super overreacting because it's Patrick Mahomes, but I mean, Patrick Mahomes still was not putting up the greatest number. I mean, Rashee Rice was producing fantasy, but Mahomes was not putting up the greatest numbers, even with Rice.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think it's really, if he can step into the Rashee Rice role. Travis Kelce looks old. He's had 2 good games and 5 very mediocre games. We know that this team has morphed over the last season and a half. They're a strong defense, run the ball. They're not putting up these eye-popping numbers. If DeAndre Hopkins could step into the Rashee Rice role, which Juju Smith-Schuster, we saw him have a really good game, and you have to think DeAndre Hopkins has more left than Juju. So if he can step into that role and really be the slot guy, the quick, underneath passing, Xavier Worthy hasn't quite taken that step forward like we were hoping. And I mean, this is a team that obviously they're trying to three-peat. They haven't lost yet. They're a bit of a juggernaut and really finally starting to get some recognition on that defense. But you said it. I mean, Mahomes, for fantasy purposes, has not been Mahomes for a year and a half now. And before that, so he won the MVP 2 seasons back, was top 2 fantasy quarterback without the first year without Tyreek. I know he put up big fantasy numbers, and that's kind of fallen off a cliff. I do think he's still a safe guy to own in Dynasty because he's going to be a starting quarterback in the NFL for the next 10 years, and he's likely going to at least give you top half of the league production. I'm curious, before I speak on Tennessee, you don't sound super high on him. Rest of the season, give me a number. Where would you rank DeAndre Hopkins? Let's go full point PPR.
I mean, I'd say before this, I'd have him maybe like 46 to like 50, something like that. just because of the talent that there, even though, he's been struggling and Tennessee has been struggling in general. Now I'd maybe put him like back end wide receiver 3. So I'd say like, let's say like wide receiver 33 through 36 if he's healthy, but that's a big risk. I honestly would not be surprised if this injury really does kind of linger on throughout the year, and then Kansas City ends up with another injured wide receiver. Somehow still wins and kicks, the crap out of my team. So
Yeah, I mean, it kind of feels like, especially, and I know it's a different position, but Kareem Hunt off his couch, putting up numbers. It seems like they can just the system is so well oiled at this point they can just plug in anybody. I think I'm a little higher for the rest of the season. I would say I don't know if I'd put him quite at a wide receiver 2, but I think he's in that 25 to 30 range, and he will have some good weeks in there for sure. But I tend to agree. I think this is, assuming health, this is more of a real life football impacting thing. And nobody in the AFC, and you're the Titans, you're in the AFC. Obviously, you're not going anywhere, but nobody in the AFC is happy to see this. They were already, no matter who was playing receiver, they were already going to be tough to beat in the playoffs. We know it's Patrick Mahomes, and defense travels. Defense generally is aided by the weather as it gets colder. So it's going to be tough to outscore these guys. As everybody is, I don't care about Taylor Swift. I'm tired of seeing Patrick Mahomes. I'm tired of seeing him win. I've gotten to that point where I'm fatigued. I liked seeing him at first. He was the guy to he didn't beat Brady, but he was the guy to kind of get that attention, take that attention away from Brady. As far as the Titans go, I'm Calvin Ridley's been getting targets. Maybe he'll get more, but it's just been a wasteland. Will Levis does not look like the guy. Honestly, Callahan does not look like a head coach. He looks like a guy who was, everybody wants the next Sean McVay. Everybody wants that young stud offensive assistant who's just going to come in and revolutionize your offense, motivate your team, and just win. And sometimes there's misses, and I'm sure he'll get better as time goes on. I doubt it's going to be in Tennessee. He should get another year because obviously with all the turnover. But preseason, when we were looking at his team, they had brought in Tony Pollard, they had brought in Calvin Ridley, they had added a first-round offensive lineman 2 years in a row. They should be better than what they are, and they have a good defense. So if you're an offensive-minded head coach, you have to get more out of your offense. And I think maybe Tony Pollard's the person that helps more than anything. Not really starting anybody else on that Tennessee offense.
Yeah, you're talking about coaching. It's hard to kind of tell because, Will Levis didn't really show too much promise last year. It sometimes did. It showed little glimpses of it. But, I agree. Callahan does not look the best. Tony Pollard is doing enough. He's not looking amazing, but he's not looking terrible. I think he's only had really 1 week where he's been pretty inefficient. If I might be wrong about that, but I think it's only 1 week where it's been pretty bad efficiency. Tennessee's just a very hard offense to trust. We came in with a lot of hopes to the season with this offense. D-Hop, Calvin Ridley, Will Levis second year, only played, 6 games or less last in his rookie season.
He had one good game. He had that first start where I think it was 4 touchdown passes, and everybody got really excited.
Touchdown passes were just like deep bombs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just, guys just breaking, they just broke Vrabel, because, Mike Vrabel was the coach, and at that time, he just realized, oh, hey, find this coverage, let Levis just throw the ball up there. I think that was more, but Levis is not the guy. Pollard and Tajay, Pollard has looked good. Tajay's been hurt, but even when he's been healthy, it's just been very disappointing for where you were drafting at. He's producing like a backup running back, but for where we drafted him at is terrible. I'm not trusting anyone but Pollard. Maybe now that D-Hop's gone, Ridley at the flex isn't bad, but still, I'm not sure.
Yeah. It's I mean, we were told it was going to be a 50-50 split. Tajay was on the field more than Derrick Henry last year. It's been well documented. He's been a big disappointment for me. I was definitely on the Spear side and clearly wrong because it's until further notice or injury happens, Pollard's clearly the RB1 and Spears is a change of pace guy. But maybe it'll get better for the Tennessee offense. Honestly, I don't see it getting any worse. They're right down there with the Browns, and the two-less Dolphins is just the most hapless offenses we've seen. And you mentioned it just before we move on. Mike Vrabel was a good head coach. He did a lot with a little over the years. He had a bad season. You talk about a monumental mistake. Sometimes you fire a head coach too early and you suffer for years. Tennessee may be in purgatory for a while, football purgatory, to make up for a really bad firing decision.
No, I mean, honestly, I want to jump on that too. Like, I agree. I mean, name the best quarterback that Vrabel had.
Tannehill.
Exactly. I mean, I love Tannehill. Obviously, I like him as a person, so I always, appreciate him more than other people did. But like, no, he's never a Super Bowl winning quarterback or anything.
Yeah. He had it with that Tannehill as the quarterback. He was the number 1 seed a few years ago in the AFC. I mean,
they did have that one season where they went like 11-5 or something, right? And like,
yeah,
it was a weaker year where there was no like dominant. And then I think Tom Brady knocked them out first round or something.
Probably. I mean, he knocked them out.
It was the Ravens or Patriots. It was Ravens or Patriots. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it was the Ravens, but yeah. Either way. They didn't make it far, and like I said, Vrabel will be a hot coaching name. There's going to be some jobs that always open up. I do expect him to be coaching somewhere. And the guy can coach defense. He needs a really strong offensive coordinator, and you could see him. I could see him being the Giants head coach. I don't think Dayball's going to make it. But.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's either going to get an NFL head coaching job or college coaching job or a DC job for sure.
Yeah. So moving on, couple of big rumors. Let's start. Supposedly, all indications are we've heard Cooper Kupp could be on the trade market. You have the Rams sitting at 2-4, 2-5. Let's double check that.
2-5.
2-5. So not great. No, 2-4.
They already have their bye week. Oh yeah, they did week 6. Yeah.
So not great. This was a team that really surprised last year, had some expectations coming into this season, even though they lost Aaron Donald, one of the best defensive players in history. But the injuries more than anything, with losing Puka, losing Cooper Kupp, the injuries have certainly set them back. Losing pretty much every offensive lineman that's ever suited up for them, it feels like, for at least some time. So Matt Stafford's not getting any older. We're going to get to that in just a second. They have been traditionally a team that they sold out to win the Super Bowl. I mean, they didn't have a first-round pick for how many ever years in a row. They've kicked the can. At some point, you got to hit the reset button, accumulate some assets, get younger, and try to start rebuilding. Is Cooper Kupp going to be that first brick out of the wall? And if he is, where do you think he's going, Mason?
I mean, my thing would kind of be Pittsburgh. I personally don't think it's the best move for Pittsburgh because I still don't think that would make them a true contender. I mean, there's no way the Steelers team could beat the Chiefs or the Bills or the Ravens really. I mean, maybe the Ravens just because, division game. But I don't think they could. I don't think it'd be a smart move. But that's where I'm kind of leaning for. Pickens is, he's solid, but he's really not a wide receiver one. I don't think he's that guy that's really going to elevate a team enough. Last week or this week, he obviously put up some good points. I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I did not pay attention to that game, but I'm pretty sure Pickens had a pretty good game. I think it was like over 100 yards. I think it was like 130 yards or something, right?
111.
Yeah, okay. I think that was his highest yards of the season. But that's not Pickens. That's going to be a rare occurrence for him. The Steelers do need another alpha wide receiver one really for the future. It makes sense with Kupp. They're a competing team for them to go for it. Out of all the other teams, think of other competitors that really need another wide receiver that would be willing to give up a second round and pay the entire contract is what it kind of seems like the Rams are looking for, that kind of price.
I heard that they would take some of the money. I heard the Rams were willing to take some of the money for the second round. Is the wide red, but I mean, who knows?
Oh yeah, I mean, rumors are rumors. Like one person says, "Oh, hey, they're looking for a first." One person says, "Oh no, they're looking for like a third." Like we never know until the trade actually happens. But I see Steelers. If that happens, I think it hurts them more than being in this offense with Stafford. Even when Puka comes back, I just think it's going to be a slow start for him to get going, and then there's going to be a lot of inconsistency there. I really don't see another spot that I think of him realistically going. I was going to say Chiefs when that kind of rumor dropped, but this morning, obviously, DeAndre Hopkins going there. There's no way they trade for Kupp. I don't really see another location that's even somewhat appealing to me. Niners, they're desperate at receiver right now. They're not going to make that trade. And no way that Rams and Niners are going to trade it with each other or anything.
Yeah. So I do think it's probably a smart move. The big thing with the Rams is, sorry, but your division is not what we expected. With the Niners struggling right now, the Seahawks, to me, they're very Jekyll and Hyde. They look really good one week. And then
Seahawks are a very false, like they're 4-3 or yeah
4-3.
4-3, but like it doesn't really seem like they're 4-3 team. Like they should not be 4-3.
I agree. I mean, they did not look good at all against the 49ers. They lost to the Giants. The Giants just got their doors blown off by the Eagles. They did beat the Falcons this past week, but again, the Falcons are so it's the division could be winnable.
It's pretty easy to beat a team when their quarterback Kirk Cousins is throwing like he's never played football in his life.
Yeah, I mean that's another team that's very Jekyll and Hyde. I mean and it's in the NFL. It happens. Teams will have a run of a few bad games and then they'll bounce back. I think this week is going to tell a lot of the story, and we'll get to the next part in a second. But they're playing the Vikings. They need to win. If they can't win, you go to 2-5. You probably look at go ahead and recouping some assets. I do think that they will trade him. I don't know that they'll get a second. I could see a third and like a fifth. He's a 31-year-old receiver. A lot of it will come down to the money. I think if they are asking the other team to take most of that contract or all of it, I think a third is about the best they'll do. If they're willing to take some of that money, they might very well bump up to a second. And I got a different. So I'm gonna go with two. One, and I don't think this is going to happen, but it has been one of the teams mentioned. I don't think this is how Adam Peters operates in general, and I think we're still a year away from making this kind of trade. But the Commanders do need a second wide receiver. Jaden Daniels would be a great help for a rookie quarterback to have Cooper Kupp mostly in the slot. That's where we really don't have anybody. Luke McCaffrey's still a year away. There's an extra third-round pick they have from the Jahan Dotson trade. So just throw that out there. If you told me preseason I could trade Jahan Dotson for Cooper Kupp, yeah, that'd be hard to turn down. Even not even knowing, how far ahead of schedule Jaden Daniels was going to be, and just in general how much better they were going to be than 4-13 team last year. But the one that I think is realistic, a team that again, the NFC is, I mean, I don't think the NFC is as good as we thought, partially because the 49ers haven't been that juggernaut. The Lions are really good.
Eagles have been struggling. I mean, they not, they haven't been bad, but they haven't been the Eagles we've been expecting to see.
Yeah. I mean, they've been bad.
Cowboys have been awful.
Cowboys have been awful. I mean, the Packers look really good all of a sudden, but who knows? Who knows with them? I mean, they shut down.
The Falcons look very inconsistent.
Well, that's where I was going. You kind of stole my thunder on that. That's the team. So right now the Lions look clearly to be the best team. I think the Lions are clearly the best team. We'll see what happens. But I do see, and they're 4-3, but again, this is another division that is very winnable. They've already beat the Lions. They just lost their slot wide receiver for the year. If you're Tampa Bay and you really think you have a window to try to slip into a Super Bowl, Tampa Bay makes sense. Again, it's inside the same conference, but not within the same division. So a la the Titans sending away, Hopkins to the Chiefs. I could see the Buccaneers as a realistic landing spot for them.
Yeah, I mean, I could as well. I also something that honestly just came to my mind when we were talking about this. Maybe the Lions even something that the Lions, something we weren't even talking about mentioning is Jameson Williams got suspended for 2 games for PEDs. Yeah. And what is this? So first he started with the injury. Second, he did the gambling suspension, and now it's PED suspension. That's how you start to work your way out of the league, honestly. So in a dynasty way, I'm kind of trying to sell him high because it's one more little mistake and he might be done. But they could be looking towards someone else potentially. But I think it's more likely they trade defense because of the Hutchinson injury. I know Myles Garrett's kind of a interesting thing that's kind of out there. I know we don't really talk defense, so I just want to say that real quick. But yeah, I mean Bucks would make sense. I mean, especially with Evans, also being out. I think they don't think he's going to be back until week 11 at least. I think is when they say is the earliest return, potential earliest return. I would say it's safe return week 13 safe. That's safe. He'll be there for fantasy playoffs, but
yeah. I mean, do you really want to go through the meat of the season with Sterling Shepard and McMillan, rookie, who's looked okay, and he's I like him as that flyer in Dynasty, but I mean, if Jalen McMillan and Sterling Shepard are your top 2 receivers, and Cade Otton, I definitely think the running backs are going to get more work. But yeah, if you want to be a serious contender, if you want to win a very winnable division, the Bucks make sense. And as far as Myles Garrett goes, yeah, I would trade the farm for him. I don't know what his contract situation is, but he's one of the 5 defensive players that can impact every game. He's exactly the kind of player that the Commanders need on defense. We've already invested a lot in the D-line, so that probably doesn't happen either. But yeah, I would give up quite a bit for him.
Oh, I mean, honestly, Niners are struggling right now. We're 3-4, and I was like, Myles Garrett's on the market. Trade whatever we need. If you have Bosa and Myles Garrett on opposite sides, what is a quarterback gonna do? That
Yeah.
He is one of those guys that when he's on the market, you're just like, oh crap,
I've heard rumors. Zadarius Smith.
I don't know how serious it is though.
I can't imagine. He's your building block. I think you could trade essentially every other player on the Cleveland Browns before you trade him. Zadarius Smith, the other D end, I'm hearing a lot of talk that he may be going to Washington. You can have him for a 6th or 7th round pick, give you depth. So that I don't hate that either. Talking about the Rams though, and we talked about this a little bit pre-show. There is a hot and spicy rumor going around that the Vikings and the Rams have engaged in conversations regarding Matthew Stafford for Sam Darnold, which you never see these kind of trades midseason in the NFL. You never see teams swapping starting quarterbacks. The Jared Goff Stafford, it looked like Goff was, he was a throw-in in that trade, but it was in the offseason. To see 2 starting quarterbacks of that caliber traded just seems very hard to believe. So I highly doubt this will happen. But Kevin O'Connell won the Super Bowl as offensive coordinator with Matt Stafford. They have a Super Bowl caliber defense in Minnesota. They're off to a great start. And again, as we just said, the NFC looks winnable. They played the Lions down to the wire. They lost, but they played them down to the wire. And I don't know who else scares you in the NFC. If you're the Vikings, You've just drafted a quarterback in the first round that you hope is your quarterback of the future, but you feel like you have a window right now that you could win a Super Bowl. Do you really want to trust Sam Darnold to go the whole season and then in the playoffs, Sam Darnold, to try to get you to the promised land? One of the few franchises that's never won a Super Bowl. Isn't that right? I'm pretty sure that's right. The Vikings made some Super Bowls with the Purple People Eaters, but I'm pretty certain that they've never won one.
I don't, man. It just, like I was saying before, it's just, they're 5-1. They look. Darnold hasn't had a game. I mean, even with, yeah, like he really didn't look bad. It's hard to trade away a guy and risk messing up the system entirely. And also, you got to. Would Rams want to give up Stafford, who probable Hall of Fame quarterback, for a guy that's had half of a good season? Not even half of a good season. Is that the value they're wanting back? So I don't see it happening. It just, yeah, I see. I mean, I think Stafford is more likely to be traded next offseason to a team maybe like the Titans or somebody like that, where if they see enough during this season that it's like, oh, we're maybe a contender, but we just have no quarterback, they might be able to trade for Stafford.
Yeah, I mean, I think from a Rams perspective, obviously they know him better than anyone else in the league. There were the murmurs that he was going to retire after last season, but they look pretty good. They pushed the Lions to the brink in the divisional playoffs. It's one of those things. I think if they lose, and this is the even weirder thing with this rumor is they play each other this week, and if the Rams are able to win, then that's probably off the table. You're probably not trading Stafford. If you get to 3-4, you're a game and a half out of your division. We've discussed it. It looks winnable. They're a team that could get hot late as they get healthy. You're probably not making that move. But if you lose to the Vikings, you go to 2-5. Again, at some point, you got to hit the reset button. I think what's Darnold, 28?
It's 27 or 28, I want to say. I'll fact check right now. But
obviously, he's making a lot less money. You're going to have, if the Rams were to make this move, they would have to, that you would be doing it knowing you're going to re-sign Darnold, and you're going with Darnold for the next couple of seasons.
Darnold is 27 as of now.
27 years old. So Stafford's 36. So you're getting younger. You're trying to, again, open up that window. Even with re-signing him, something tells me it would be less than what Stafford's making right now. I mean, Super Bowl winning guy who's put up Hall of Fame level stats. Here's the thing. If the Vikings win and Darnold looks good, maybe the Vikings don't want to do it. So it's really contingent on a lot of things. But the only thing that even makes it remotely possible for me is the Kevin O'Connell connection. He was the OC in that Super Bowl. He knows that offense. So I think it's pretty clear upgrade. I mean, I think it's hard to argue that he wouldn't be an upgrade over Darnold, especially come playoff time. So it would be it would set the internet on fire. It would be an insane trade, but it does solve some issues for some teams. So we won't spend too much time talking about this hypothetical, but that rumor is running rampant right now. We will see what this Thursday night game looks like. I hope Cooper Kupp is back. Kind of feels like a showcase game if they are going to trade him. The Vikings' pass defense is susceptible. The run defense is right up there with Kansas City, but they are beatable through the air, and I think you'd see a really big game out of Cooper Kupp. So moving on, we've hinted at a couple, but just really rough week injury-wise. The Bucs, Mike Evans probably shouldn't have been on the field. They ran him out there, and now he's out, like you said, probably till week 11. I've heard a lot of people criticizing having Chris Godwin in with 50 seconds to go, down by 10 with no timeouts. But to me, these guys are professional. I heard somebody made a take, and I really agree with it. This isn't Little League. This isn't me coaching my 11-year-old in Pee Wee, and we're making sure everybody gets on the field at some point. These are highly paid professional athletes. It's not like it was a 30-point blowout. Crazy things happen. You're down by a touchdown and a field goal. I think it is ridiculous that they would criticize Todd Bowles and the Buccaneers for having Chris Godwin out there. It really sucks, though. He was having his best year of his career, at least yardage-wise. He was catching touchdowns. They had moved him back to the slot. This offense was humming. And now all of a sudden, you're looking at maybe 4 weeks with neither one of your top receivers. What do you think this means for Baker Mayfield?
It definitely hurts Baker. Obviously, he's been great for fantasy to start the season off. I think every single week he's been a very solid quarterback production, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's shown enough that even with, out his top two weapons, that he'll produce decent amounts. But I think we're starting to maybe look at Baker as a more streaming option in these weeks. If he's on your team, I'm still not dropping him. Definitely not this week. I want to see a week before, and if he just does terrible without his weapons, maybe drop him, try to pick him back up when Evans gets back or something. But still trying to see how he does this week. I just think it hurts him. As far as the weapons on Tampa, obviously Sterling Shepard should take a little bit of a step up if he can stay healthy. McMillan, rookie, hopefully he can do something. Cade Otton should be the biggest win from this. If you have Cade Otton, looking at it now with especially Dallas Goedert injury, I regret trading for Dallas Goedert in that league, especially because everyone else on my team has decided to completely fall apart. But also, I think Rachaad White is a big win for this. Last week, I was just talking about how I think his value is going to start going down because Bucky Irving is starting to improve. But Rachaad White's the receiving back, so I think it's going to get him in a lot more because they're going to need somebody to help Baker out.
Yeah. I mean, I could see a lot of two-back sets, shotgun with two running backs and motioning Rachaad White out into the slot. I agree. I mean, Auden had 10 targets, 8 catches, and 100 yards in this past game. Now, obviously, they got behind by a lot early, so they were having to throw the ball. But he's a top 10 tight end until further notice, I would say. And you were very quick to take a victory lap on that Goddard trade, and he had a great game that first week.
It's because he had an amazing week, and then he's been hurt ever since because he got hurt like the first drive of the next week, and then he's just been sitting on my bench. And even when he comes back, I'm like, "Ooh, do I even play him?"
Yeah, I'm probably not unless Devontae Smith or AJ Brown goes down again. Until further notice, Cade Otton would probably be the play for me. I do.
Mike Evans and Godwin gone. Like, there's no way. Like, maybe I throw Goddard in at a flex, but Cade Otton is locked in at my tight end position.
Yeah, I mean, you've got Trey Palmer is the third guy. I know you mentioned Sterling Shepard. You mentioned Jalen McMillan. They're just who's available on the street. Like I said, I definitely see Cooper Kupp. If you think you've got a legitimate playoff run here, Cooper Kupp could be a guy. Not sure of a ton of other, Cortland Sutton. If the Broncos were to decide to move on from him, that's been rumored. Would obviously be cheaper than Kupp. There's just not a lot out there right now, and you if you're the Buccaneers, unless you swing for the fences, you're really just trying to batten down the hatches, go 500 while Evans is out. One thing I will say, Evans has dealt with these hamstring injuries throughout his career. He's a guy right now, if you're in a decent spot, so if you're in a top 4 spot in your league, you have an IR spot open, you have decent depth. Mike Evans is a league winner. I would not mind. You could probably get him fairly cheap, especially if he's on a team that needs wins now. He's not a guy that I would mind going out and trading for in the next week. Because I do think once he's back, especially with no Godwin, he is just going to eat the targets. And we know that this is a team who doesn't have a great defense. They're going to have to throw the ball, and I think he'll be able – he's dealt with this a lot in his career. He'll be back, and he'll be a top 10 wide receiver when he's back. But until then, I like McMillan more than Shepard just because it's kind of that unknown. You know, he looked good against Washington when our secondary was absolutely just playing the worst in the league, and we've gotten better every week. But he looked good in that first game. In spots, he's looked pretty good. So we'll see. I don't mind Palmer either as a deep league dart throw or in a dynasty league situation. But obviously, K. Dalton's a guy you want to be starting. So let's shift over to your neck of the woods. Not the only team with just a battered receiving crew. Brandon Ayuk, $30 million man, one good game. And I think we talked about it a little bit offline.
And we lost that game.
Do what?
And we lost that game. I was at that game.
Yeah. That's a bummer. And that was the Cardinal game, right? It's for the player, good for him. This is why you hold out. He got paid. If he doesn't get that contract and he tears his ACL, we're talking tens of millions of dollars that he would never see. So it's good for him. Terrible for San Francisco. So we know he's out for the season. What's going on with Debo?
Obviously, Debo hurt a lot of fantasy rosters. There was a last minute kind of their drop, like, oh, he's sick. What's kind of going on? But they said he's going to play. I don't think he returned to the field after the first drive. Went to the hospital at one point. It's pneumonia. When you have that, like, even if he plays next week, that's something where, it hurts the lungs. You're not going to be 100% as a player. Just, if he's over it and he only has like 3 real days of solid recovery, he's not going to be 100% to be out there, producing at these high level, doing Debo things, doing these little trick plays, running the ball. You can't do that, when your body's not healthy for that. You just can't. So even if he does play, I'm honestly sitting him. Even if unless you're just desperate, but I would sit Debo if you have any other option this week. Kittle also dealing with an injury. Not sure if he's going to play. That's one that's more questionable. Really is a lot of who knows what. Jawan Jennings obviously injured. Ricky Pearsall's back. Do we really expect him to go off? No. The dude got shot a month and a half ago. He missed valuable rookie practice time. We're just being realistic. Like, he missed a lot of valuable practice time. He's just coming back. Obviously it's going to take a while for him to really get going after something like that happens to you. I don't know who's going to really, if Kittle's out, I have no idea. I would just expect Jordan Mason to be the only thing. Sit Brock Purdue this week. Last week was terrible. He looked just dumb at certain times. Obviously the Chiefs pass rush was just all over him. But I'm not starting any Niner this week except Kittle if he plays and Jordan Mason.
It's not Ronnie Bell season yet?
Ronnie Bell can't catch the ball. I had such high hopes for Ronnie Bell. All right, but he's been disappointing. Him and Sonny Gray Danny Gray. Am I saying that right?
I think it's Danny was your guy. Sonny Gray, I think, was a running back.
Sonny Gray is a baseball player.
He was baseball.
Yeah, he's a pitcher.
So we and just to further, we did get a Juwan Jennings did not practice today. That's a guy long term. We've seen what he did early when the guys were missing. So he should be rostered in 100% of leagues. And again, another guy, obviously not on Mike Evans' level, but he's a guy who could be a league winner late in the year. He disappears when the talent roster is full. But when he's the guy, he delivers. He very likely, hate to bring this up again, Not rubbing salt in the wound by any means, but very likely could have been Super Bowl MVP if the 49ers win last year. He's played well over stretches. And again, I don't know that I'm necessarily running out to trade for him, but he's a guy that should be rostered everywhere, and you find room for him because as the season progresses, he's going to be an impact player. It's just, I mean, it's tough, man. I feel like a lot of years we say this, but just the injuries have just been astronomically bad. Seems like wide receiver as well has been like normally your running backs are the more injury prone position. But it just seems like wide receiver after wide receiver has went down. So we'll see how it pans out going forward. But you guys desperately need Christian McCaffrey back. And he might be playing wide receiver with Jordan Mason in the backfield quite a bit if the roster construction looks like this and he's back in a week or two.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the injuries have been just drastic for us this season. But yeah, like you're saying, wide receivers is your, normally you'll see a lot of people, you'll draft a running back and say, oh, I'm going to draft their backup as a handcuff. That's been a normal thing for years in fantasy. This year, it's like, oh, do we need to start drafting handcuffs for wide receivers? Like, is that a real option? Or it seems like every week there's like 2 or 3 players at, it's not always the wide receiver position, but, very notable guys where it's just like, dang, those are like big injuries. And then, there's always a ton of little tweaks and it just injuries are real this year. It seems like.
Yeah. I mean, almost half of your top 20 drafted wide receivers. I mean, if you start naming them all, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, Rashee Rice, Chris Godwin now, Brandon Ayuk. That's just off the top of my head. And there's quite a few more. Nico Collins. Tank Dell was hurt a little bit early. You have just so many wide receivers that have A.J. Brown missed time. Devontae Smith missed time. You think about the running backs, and I mean Pacheco. That's really as far as your top guys that are drafted. Obviously McCaffrey, but he hasn't played at all. So it's just been tough. And you haven't really seen a lot of big time quarterbacks. Knock on wood, miss significant time. That'll lead me into. We'll touch on Deshaun Watson. We know he wasn't doing much for fantasy. If you were starting him, it was only in a super flex. Hopefully you've got other options. Personally, I'd rather be starting Jameis Winston. I did spend a league that I needed a quarterback. I think I spent about 40% of fab to pick up Jameis Winston just because he should be the starter. And we know he can produce fantasy-wise. He'll chuck it down there to Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku and whoever else is down there. He doesn't care. He'll throw it down there. But before we get into any other like Browns, what did you think? So I'm not even 100% sure this is real. Obviously, there was some cheering going on from Browns fans. Did you see the video of some Browns fans chanting, "You deserve it"? A la
that was AI, dude. That was AI.
Are you sure?
Yes. Yeah. When I first saw that, I was like, no way that's happening. But that was I've seen that video. I'm like 99% sure that's it.
Okay. So I will accept that because, like I said, it didn't seem like it was real. But just the cheering with him down. We saw Jameis Winston. The guy needs to be a public speaker. He needs to be a pastor of a church. Whatever, he needs to do something where he's talking to the public after he's done with his football career. He gave an impassioned plea or defense of Deshaun Watson. Myles Garrett had stepped up. Do you think this is just abhorrent of the Browns fans? Do you think it's somewhat deserved? Is it karma? What do you think of them cheering Deshaun Watson as he was getting carried off the field?
I mean, I don't want to get too much into the necessarily karma part about it for, off the field issues. I think that's definitely some of the cheering. But also just when you're 1-5, it's very disappointing when you're paying a quarterback, what is it, like $50 million on average a year. Fans have the right to be upset. Obviously, when it's an injury like that, it does suck for anyone. You don't necessarily want anyone to get hurt. There's a lot of hate towards Deshaun Watson for many reasons. I don't know, but I honestly think that for fantasy wise, this is the better thing to happen for the Browns. Cedric Tillman had a solid week last week for the first time ever. Really, it was really weird. Like I wasn't even paying attention to it because I was just kind of been over all my Browns players all year. And someone sent me a trade offer for Cedric Tillman today, and I was just like, oh, like all right, like that's like wow. I did not like I was just holding him on my roster for like hope and it actually happened. Like, is there actually some hope for some Browns players now? Like it's a weird thing to think about.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get any worse. We know what Jameis Winston can do, and I think Watson was having his best game maybe as a Brown before he went out, which is just. He wasn't lighting the world on fire, but he had been pretty accurate. He had a decent numbers anyway. But Jameis Winston is a guy who's fun to watch play football. Man, he's going to make some mistakes, but he's fun to watch. He brings an enthusiasm. His teammates love him. I don't think that can be said for Deshaun Watson, regardless of the injury. Having the team having faith and just liking the quarterback can go a long way. And not to crap on the Jets, but I don't know how many of those guys really like Aaron Rodgers other than Devontae Adams. And obviously you don't have to like the guy.
Sorry to cut him, but I mean, you'll never win if you don't believe in your quarterback. I mean, dude, did you watch Amari Cooper when he was with the Browns?
Yep.
Versus just 1 week with the Bills? I mean, he didn't pick it up till the second half, and for a first week, it was a great first week for Cooper with the team. But like you could just tell that attitude was completely different because he's like, oh, I believe in Josh Allen. Like, if you do not believe in your quarterback, you're never going to do it. Like, Cooper looked lazy with the Browns, and now he looks like he's just back ready to actually play football.
Yeah. I mean, he looked like somebody, a man they had told it, he had 6 months to live, and there was nothing they could do when he was in Cleveland. And then they came up with an experimental treatment, and the sickness is gone, and he's got a new life. Like he looks like an entirely different player. We'll see. There have been some rumors that they may be shopping David Njoku. I think Denver, the Chargers. There was one other team supposedly had inquired. The Chargers would be a good one. Denver and I can't remember the third team, but the other two look like downgrades, especially now that he should be the number one target getter in a Jameis Winston-led offense that's going to throw the ball down the field. We'll see how they get Nick Chubb, worked back in. But it does feel like if you're the Browns, they should just be accumulating as many future assets as possible. And I mean, you need, no matter what, you're going to have that albatross of a Deshaun Watson contract for the next couple of years. So you need cheap talent, cheap young talent on rookie contracts, and just look to rebuild. It's really shocking how different this. I mean, it's NFL. Things change year to year, but they looked down the stretch like a Super Bowl contender. The defense was playing lights out. Joe Flacco. I mean, the team was energized, and to just completely bottom out as they have. You hate it for Browns fans. Hate it for you, Dan. If you're listening, I know what that is. It's just no hope. You got two-time Coach of the Year, Kevin Stefanski. I don't think he just forgot how to coach. I mean, he coached his tail off last year, and it's just been bad. So hopefully brighter days are ahead for Cleveland, their players and their fans.
No, I mean, Browns are looking at a situation where it's kind of like, who are we going to be drafting with our top 3 pick at this point? And I hope it's not Carson Beck because, my last name being Beck, I've kind of told myself wherever he goes, I'm going to get a jersey just because I feel like I need to. But There was just to start. There was a Washington quarterback. His last name was Beck. He was a backup for you
John
guys.
Beck.
Who?
John Beck.
No.
Pretty certain.
It might have been. I'll look that up later, but yeah. No, I do remember that, but no. That's where really the Browns are, is they're looking towards next year at this point.
It was John Beck, and it was actually, I'm trying to think of the coach. He was Shanahan in his first year. Well, one of the coaches staked his reputation that John Beck was going. Yeah, it was Mike Shanahan. He was going to be the starter, and then Rex Grossman beat him out. It was a really bad season. It led to them trading up the next year and drafting RG3. We don't talk about him too much anymore. But yeah. Speaking of that, it's funny, man. When Dalvin Cook came out, I was really hoping Washington was going to draft Dalvin Cook because I was getting the jersey. I'd hoped the same with James Cook, but I wasn't as high on James as Dalvin. And we had a chance to and did not draft. I can't remember who we drafted over him, but definitely regretted it. Obviously, Dalvin was a great second-round pick. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens in Cleveland. Shedeur Sanders, maybe. I mean, you kind of feel like they're probably drafting a quarterback. Sanders, Cam Ward, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers looked way out of his element against that Georgia defense. So I don't know that his stock is definitely on the way down. But we have a pretty decent quarterback class coming up, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, if they want to send Myles Garrett to Washington, we'll give them something. I promise. Not a first rounder though. I don't want to trade a first rounder.
Thinking, man, Myles Garrett's not going to Washington. You guys aren't in the position to make that trade.
I think we might be. Windows open fast and they close fast. That's all I'm going to say. So, real quick, we're going to hop into just a discussion on our show leagues as we wrap up the show. Haven't touched on these for a couple of weeks. Let me switch because I had the other one pulled up. So this is our median scoring league. So, as you may or may not know, you get 2 wins, 2 losses per week, or you can go 1-1. It's all based on your opponent, and then the top 6 scoring teams get a win, the bottom 6 get a loss. For me, I can speak on my team. I've had a pretty solid scoring. I'm 4th in the league in points for. I am 1st in the league in points against. I've went up against some really high-scoring weeks, and I'm 1-1 every week. I'm sitting at 7-7. We'll see. I made the trade for Jaden Daniels a little bit earlier this season. Had to get him somewhere in Dynasty, but I'm sitting right middle of the pack. At number 5, you see Mason is good people. Thank you, Mason. Thank you on the air. Mason surprised me today with a Jaden Daniels jersey, and I can no longer talk bad about Mason for at least the next month.
Glad I
how's your do what?
Glad I have that immunity.
You do. Like I said, I mean, you said it in the chat earlier, and I couldn't even respond. And Tyler has no idea why. So speak on your team. How is your team going? And then we'll give a quick synopsis on Dan's team as well.
It's going. I mean, we're in 12th place. Thankfully, this is Dynasty. Currently sitting at 11 most points scored, 5th most against, 3-11. Been looking at towards next season all year since Puka went out, pretty much. I have some decent pieces that I think I can kind of move towards. I'm not even sure if I can contend next year at this point, but I think I still really kind of can build something towards 2 years that will be really good. But right now I have Miles Sanders and Jonathan Mingo in my starting lineup. And that is genuinely my best choice at flex positions. So that's just kind of how this year is going. But I do have some decent rookies who are kind of, doing good. Like Bucky Irving is looking solid. Bo Nix as my 3rd quarterback. Trevor Lawrence is my second quarterback in the Superflex League. Obviously disappointing, but his value's down. Keon Coleman's looking okay. I recently traded Stephon Diggs for Wan'Dale Robinson and a second. I also gave away a 2026 third. Not 100% sure I felt about it. I just really wanted to get rid of Diggs. Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of looking towards the future in this and really hoping I can kind of do something in next year or the year after that.
And do you still have all your – so you added a second for 25. You have all your picks otherwise plus a second?
Yeah, and I got rid of my third and 26. So,
I mean, we're kicking the can there, and thirds, as anybody that's listening, I don't have a ton of value for them, but yeah, I mean, we'll see what the Giants quarterback. I think Wan'Dale could be a much more valuable commodity if the Giants ever figure out the quarterback situation. Obviously, Malik Neighbors is going to take a ton of attention, so he's going to open up the offense for at least that underneath stuff where Wan'Dale is so good. One thing I'll point out before we talk about Dan, there's a trade that we have right there. So our former co-host, Evan, was able to trade Kareem Hunt. He is at 10th in the league, just a couple of spots ahead of Mason. He was able to trade Kareem Hunt for two 2025 third-round picks. And I do think this is a great trade for him. He's obviously not going to contend this year. He's not going to get any value. Kareem Hunt has an expiration date. We talked about spoiled milk last week. That milk is going bad fast. I think it's very likely going to be some chunky milk by the time you get to the playoffs, even in this fantasy season. Obviously, he has very little to no value after this season. For a team that's not contending to get 2/3 for that, that's a good way to kind of give you some dart throws at rebuilding. He'd reached out to me. Originally, he wanted a second. I laughed and rejected that. Again, we don't know when Pacheco is going to be back, but it's just how many weeks? We're 4 weeks away from the surgery. They said 6 to 8 weeks. It's a very finite time value-wise. So I do think he did a really good job cashing in for the 2/3.
Yeah, I mean, if you have Kareem Hunt in a dynasty league and you're not contending, if you could even trade him out for a third right now, I would do it. He definitely does have an expiration date. Would you have really traded anything for Kareem Hunt at the beginning of the season? Not really. He's going to drop that back to that value at the end of the season. So, I mean, just get really anything you kind of can right here if you're not contending. I'd say even if you are contending and you can afford to, you have the running back depth and can trade him away, then 3 weeks, Kareem Hunt might be completely useless.
Yeah. So, everybody that's listening on the radio in Atlanta, we certainly appreciate you. Come find us on YouTube, Fantasy Rant, presented by Stadium Rant. Thank you guys all. The dogs look really good this week. So you guys are headed to your college football playoff again. But we're gonna wrap this up on YouTube. We got a few minutes of overrun, so please join us there to hear the rest of the show. Thanks again, Atlanta. To answer your question, I told Evan that this is a 3-round rookie draft league. We don't have 4 rounds. I told Evan that if we had 4 rounds, I do need another running back. I would have probably given him a 4th-round pick, but anything more than that just felt like it was reckless spending. And again, if Pacheco is out for the season, I would have given him 1/3. I don't think I would have given him 2/3, even if Pacheco is out for the season, unless I really thought I could win it. But hey, good on him for getting value. So Dan is setting one spot in front of me, so he's setting at 4th. He's at 8-6. I'm 80 or 75 points in front of him, but again, I've just been very unlucky with the points scored against me. So we're right there neck and neck. This is a 6-team playoff. So we'll see. I mean, looking at his team, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, but I just lost Brandon Ayuk from this team, so I definitely have a hole to fill there. But looking at Dan's team, losing Rashid Shaheed, not as big as losing Ayuk, but that hurts. Alan Lazard's values went way down. I mean, when I just glance at his team on paper, it doesn't look like it should be the fourth ranked team in the league. I don't know what you think, but I feel like things have kind of went pretty fortuitous for him, especially when you look at Mason Rudolph. The Derek Carr injury is really hurt. He's got Marcus Mariota that he might play this week. Calvin Ridley. He's got some pieces that I like. Obviously, Zay Flowers, Jamar Chase, Stephon Diggs has been good. Brees Hall has been up and down. I feel like there's a lot of holes there to be a true contender this season.
Yeah, I think kind of with his team is he's really kind of relying off of high floor guys with having Jamar Chase and Xavier Worthy. Brees Hall obviously can have some pretty big games. I think he's relying off them. The quarterback situation is going to be struggle all year. I mean, between Levis or Rudolph, Carr, when he comes back, who knows how he's going to do. So, I mean, Cousins is his only reliant quarterback right now. Ridley maybe could improve. But, I mean, I think I don't look at his roster and really see any certainty. And, obviously to win in fantasy, you usually need a couple players that are, your big boom players. But you also need some guys that are, your floor guys. And when I look at this roster, I don't see a ton of guys that I just scream floor at me.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Chase, that's about it. I mean, we'll see how Brees Hall looks. But Chase, I mean, obviously that was his first pick. But other than that, questionable. So good luck, Dan. I'm not pulling for you. I'm going to pass you. I have more points than you. The fantasy pendulum will swing back my direction. And just to touch on another couple of teams, this really makes for one. I mean, I would be in a worse spot if there wasn't for the median scoring. I've had a couple of really high scoring weeks. I think I scored the third and fifth most points on the season and went against the second and fourth. So obviously I do like the median scoring. But one thing that makes it different is you look at the top of the league, you have CEO Tyler Lamb sitting at 12-2. And you also have Team Wolfpack. That's my buddy Sammy out there. He's also 12-2. Only 30 points more than me, but he's at 12-2, and I'm at 7-7. So yeah, whatever. That's a 5. We're 7 weeks in. That's a 5-game gap they have between the last playoff team and those top two teams. You're still playing for the bye. Things can change quickly. But I'm enjoying the median. I don't know that I would make it median scoring in all of my leagues, but it's a fun wrinkle, and definitely it changes the dynamic of the standings for sure.
Yeah, no, median is an interesting thing because sometimes it's frustrating, but there's one league where I'm now 9-5, I believe, and I've lost 3 actual of my matches. And it's just I've only had 2 median losses. So in that way, it's the medians help me. But then sometimes it's just that's not really like football. So it's kind of frustrating.
It is. Like I said, I wouldn't do it for every league, but I'll definitely have a healthy mix of median going forward. And obviously, this is a long-time dynasty league, so we'll have it in this one for a while. Let's switch over to our redraft league and touch on that before we call it a night. So before we get into our teams, Jackson, you may remember, was my son, his first team. He had battled back from 0-4 start. He'd gotten up to 2-4, had the high score on the week, and then that bastard Mason, like the Grinch that stole Christmas, had the high score of the week against him this week and pushed him back down to 2-5. He's very upset with you, Mason. He wanted to talk more trash, but I had to hold him back. He is, however, very happy that DeAndre Hopkins on his bench was traded to Kansas City today. He was very excited getting home from school to see that news. He ran to me to make sure I'd seen it.
Yeah, I did feel bad, obviously, because he was kind of coming back. But I had to say something because, you are kind of my arch nemesis when it comes to fantasy football. So I had to say something to your child. But
The good thing for him is this is, again, almost all of our leagues are 16 playoff teams. He's only a game out of the playoffs. We're kind of top heavy in this league. So you have the 6th seed is 3 and 4. At 2 and 5, as I tried to tell him and console him as he was weeping into my arms after the game, the season is not over. You go on a run. I mean, honestly, it looks like 7 and 6 very likely gets you in the playoffs. So you can still even lose one more game. You just need to reel off some wins. But down below my struggling first-time son, we have Dan Baker sitting at 2 and 5 in the absolute cellar of this league. He's not the least points scored. He's somewhere in the middle of the pack. He has a lot of points scored against him. And honestly, when I glance at his team, I feel like this team is better than what his 4th place team in the Dynasty League is. When I just look at some of those pieces, especially with the Amari Cooper being traded, he has Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams. He's got Chuba Hubbard, Rashad White. He was able to pick up Kareem Hunt. I actually like this team more than I like his other team, Dan. So as I told Jackson, don't give up. You're only a game out of the playoffs, buddy.
Nah, I mean, honestly, your son should not give up. It's been a tough situation for him, obviously, with him drafting Tyreek. It's been the situation everyone who drafted Tyreek's been dealing with Tua going out. So it's rough. Obviously, your first year, your number 1 pick going out is bad.
And they just lost Brandon Ayuk, but hopefully he's got Tua. He's ready to plug him back in. Hopefully he'll bring back Tyreek Hill. Made a couple of good pickups. His running backs are solid. You're talking about Jackson's team with Montgomery and Mixon. So that's he's got a base. He's got to have some fortune favor him. I think he's got the 2nd most points scored against him in the league, and he's also middle of the pack as far as points he's scored.
Points against, he has the 3rd or 4th most, and I have the most scored against me.
Yeah. Lucky for you, it's still worked out to be 4 and 3 because you're what, 4th?
Yeah,
you're 4th in points scored, and you're 4th in the league. So that kind of that if there's justice in fantasy football, if you are in the position of the amount of points you scored, and that makes sense. I don't think anybody can be upset. You scored the 4th most points, you're the 4th seed right now. That's logical.
No, yeah, I mean, being 4 and 3, I haven't been upset. I mean, it's been just like my wide receiver situation between like Deontay Johnson and Pittman and Shakir has kind of been just like, who do I start? Kind of there. I mean, my team has been very dependent off of Saquon, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Josh Allen, and Jaden Reed. I mean, if those guys don't perform, I mean, T. Higgins has been kind of picking it up lately, but, if those 3 main guys don't perform, like, it's not a good week for me. I mean, Saquon obviously having a great week every week, I believe, except 2 weeks ago. He's broken 100 yards. He's been a big part of getting me here. I do like this team a lot. I might need to make one big trade that I've been kind of looking at potentially making to really give me a shot. But I like where my team's at right now. I just think I need one receiver who has that potential to really blow up because I don't want to rely off T. Higgins at the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I totally get that. I mean, as far as I'm 1 spot behind you, also at 4 and 3. I'm right in the middle. 6 in points scored, 6 in points against, and 5th in the league. So somehow that's worked out for 1 spot to my advantage. The AJ Brown injury definitely hurt me. Puka going out so early as that early draft pick is really kind of. I don't see that if he can come back. I don't really see where I need to make a trade. I like where I'm at. Aaron Jones picking up. J.K. Dobbins has kind of filled in that spot where I was hoping Zach Moss would be. But I do like that combination. Assuming health, I could probably use a little more running back depth. But in this league, I do feel like that is something you can find, especially having such a shallow bench. Rashad Bateman's a guy I hung on to. Looks like he might be playable, but I don't know that this team has to have everything fall right to make a real championship run. But I do think I'm a playoff team, and I mean honestly, you get into playoffs, anything can happen in these 1 week matchups. The Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown stack is really going to have to carry me, and they looked better last week, but honestly, to me, Jalen Hurts hasn't looked quite right. I don't know if it's just he hates his head coach, or was it Shane Steichen? Was it all him? Did he was the quarterback whisperer, and when he left, it's just never going to be quite the same. Devontae Smith, not on my team, but just a horrid week last week. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm not expecting a championship, but I do expect to be in the playoffs, and I will never ever name another team with a player name and then Hurt or Hurts in it. Because as soon as I change my name to my Puka Hurts, which is a very clever, very good fantasy football name, Puka has not played since. So that kind of sucks.
That's why you just got to leave it as the base name. So mine's just my username.
So that's just zero creativity. That's no fun. No fun at all.
I'll change it right now. I'll figure something out.
Jaden Daniels is God.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that one.
You should do it. So we've touched on our leagues. Is there anything else you want to hit before we skedaddle out of here?
Honestly, my thing is I regret not trusting my gut and going for Saquon as much as I really wanted to. That's what I want to say. I'm very glad I did in this redraft league because it's the one where I can talk crap on while streaming it. So I'm glad I really went with my gut there. But yeah, Saquon's been the real deal. I mean, RB3, 10th overall right now in just standard PPR leagues, even with having the bye week. Sheesh, Saquon's been good.
Off the top of your head, obviously Derrick Henry's one. Who's RB2, you think?
It's probably someone weird. Like,
I really don't know. I'm just
I mean, Jordan Mason was up there.
Kyron Williams, maybe?
It could be Kyron, but I want to also say with the bye. I mean, here, let me see. RB2 right now is Kamara. Yeah, that makes sense.
Really? Even as bad as he's been? That actually surprised me a little bit just because it seems like he's fallen off. Kyron is 5.
That one, 4 touchdown week alone is just that's 3 weeks of performances for the average running back.
Yeah, and he's actually 4th overall in this league. So he's quite a few spots ahead of Saquon, even though they're next to each other.
And I mean, honestly, besides this last week, Kamara's done solid every other week in PPR. I mean, not not every other week he's done amazing. The last 3 weeks he's just done okay, but it's not like you're – I mean, obviously you want more out of Kamara, but you're not oh, man, that was a terrible, terrible week.
Yeah. I mean, he's only had 1 week this last week where he wasn't at least an RB2. So RB6, RB1 with the 44 points, RB15, 4, 22, 17, and then 32.
But this last week, the Saints just looked awful. It wasn't his fault. The Saints just
it wasn't.
Yeah, the Saints are just bad this last week.
The Broncos' defense is legit.
Sean Payton knows how to coach a defense. We'll give him that.
What do you think? We'll wrap up on this, and we got to Kamara. The Saints, 2-year extension for Alvin Kamara. I know there had been a little bit of trade rumors with him, but he's a 29-year-old running back. They're in cap hell already. What are you doing if you're the Saints front office?
I was a little confused by it too because it was kind of just okay, you guys need to rebuild, but I guess the front office is not committing to the rebuild is what I kind of saw with that. Or they kind of think maybe we I don't know. There's 2 sides of it. The other side of it is also okay, they are rebuilding, but they know Kamara is a solid piece. He's going to produce for the offense. And if they draft a rookie quarterback next year, then Alvin Kamara will help that rookie quarterback. That's kind of my one side of it. Because, if they do commit to an entire rebuild, they're going to free up a lot of cap space in other places where they can afford to pay Kamara this.
Yeah. He seemed like the obvious candidate to be gone after this season as one of the main people they could save money. And instead they re-upped for 2 years, a little over $12 million a year to a guy that's going to be in his 30 and 31-year-old season. It doesn't feel – it makes you think the salary cap isn't real. We know a lot of these teams know how to manipulate it. At some point, the check is somebody's going to call for that check to be paid. That credit card bill is going to have to be paid at some point. And the Saints, that's the thing too. Like you've fallen off a cliff. You look really good for 2 weeks, and now you've just completely crashed into a wall. Derek Carr, you lose Derek Carr. Obviously, any team loses their starting quarterback, but Derek Carr, let's be real, he's a middle of the pack guy. Their defense is pretty wrecked by injuries as well, but. Yeah, I don't know. This feels like a franchise that, like you said, they didn't want to commit to a full rebuild, but they really don't have a direction, and they're just going to kind of languish around that 5 to 8 wins a season and not be a true contender for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it seems like to me the Saints kind of way is just like, oh, just keep bringing in vets. They're living off the Drew Brees days. I feel like that's kind of what they just because even after Drew Brees, they've had a couple of years where they've been decent and been kind of contenders. And I think they're just kind of holding on to that thought is like, oh, we can squeak into playoffs and maybe try to contend. I think this boosts Kamara's value for me because as long as he's in the Saints organization, 2 more years on the team that doesn't really have anything proven except Olave, it's a good spot to be.
It's definitely given his dynasty value a new lease on life.
I made it to where I was like, maybe he's worth a middle second for like obviously if you're winning for this year, he's worth a second. But like long term, I was like, this might be it. But now I'm like, oh, confidently he's worth a second because I think he at least for sure has 1 more year.
Yeah, I agree. And maybe they'll get back to looking at least competitive when Carr's back. We'll see. Olave's been a disappointment. Hopefully he can get back, especially with no Shaheed. He should be a guy who comes on strong at the end of the year when he's back. But it's tough to trust anybody how badly they were against the Broncos. But there'll be better days. So with that, everybody that stuck with us, that joined us, we really appreciate you. Dan, if you're out there, we hope you get to feeling better and you'll be back next week. Big day for Mason and myself. 49ers are in an almost must-win situation with the Cowboys, and the Washington Commanders. We've got the Bears coming to town. Maybe we'll get to see that 1 versus 2 matchup, or maybe we get to see Marcus Mariota make his career record 3-0 against the Bears as a starting quarterback. But either way, Chicago, you better prepare yourselves. So thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next week. Peace out.